What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball, a New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick and Raphael. What's poppin' with you, bro?
What up, bro? My kingdom for some NBA basketball. This is the NBA down bad for this one. They could have had like some teams who ain't got no all-stars. They could have been playing last night. They could have been playing. We should have got a Kings Blazers game or something. I guess this is one of those instances where you never really know what you got until it's gone. And man, if this is how, shout out to the college game. Obviously NCAA women's basketball is much more entertaining than men's right now, but I mean, it is just bereft. I've gotten to know a lot of sports shows that I didn't know existed because I'm trying to find stuff to watch, content to consume on the NBA. So, other than that, I'm good, bro. I'm good on this side. How's everything on your end?
Same thing, man. Blessed, ready for the back half of the season to commence, and for the games to begin. Shout out to JJ Redick for throwing some wild takes.
Man.
Getting us from All-Star to this point because he's been keeping the NBA alive these last couple of days. But before we dive into deep to anything, make sure you guys follow us on X, on Twitter, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO Basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking the episode below and make sure you subscribe to the channel. So, one of those teams that you mentioned that had no All-Stars in the All-Star break was the Pelicans. So they've been at home. CJ had to do his president of the NBA PA duties, and then he got right back home with his family. But other than that, the Pelicans were at home during all the festivities over the past week, and so that should have given them more time to get healthy, given them more time to get fresh. You could tell Brandon Ingram was kind of worn down. This is the most games he's played up until this point in the season in a while. You could tell he was wearing down a little bit. So it gave them an opportunity to kind of get fresh. But what we want to talk about today were just some things that we're looking for coming out of the All-Star break. Obviously, with some teams with 26 games, 27 games, whatever it may be, this is setting up to be one of the better races down the stretch that the NBA has had in such a long time. And with so many teams, like you got a good 11, 12 teams that still think, hey, I could get in the play-in, or hey, I could jump up a couple seeds or whatnot. You're going to have people coming out the gates firing on all cylinders. And so for the Pelicans, what does that look like? What are some of the things that you have your eye on these last stretch of games that you want to see improve, you want to see change, or you want to see corrected altogether?
Yeah, man. It's going to be a tough fight going down the stretch, and especially in the West, right? There's kind of like three different tiers. There's like the top four, which is OKC, Minnesota, Denver, and the Clippers. And then you kind of got, the Suns and the Pelicans and the Mavs kind of in their little morass together. And then the Kings, which are right there, they're kind of in that mix too. And then you got that kind of that bottom half, that bottom part of the standings with the Lakers and the Warriors and teams like that. And so the Pelicans, I think they have an opportunity. We still haven't seen the real injury bug hit the Clippers just yet. We really haven't seen like any of the teams up top had to deal with any adversity. Now, maybe they won't, right? And they'll just coast, and that'll be the top four. But the Pelicans have an opportunity to at least make up some ground and catch that fourth spot. So one of the things that I'm looking for them to do that is that, like last episode, we talked about how the Pelicans haven't been playing their best, yet they're kind of in a good space in order to secure a playoff spot and avoid the play-in. One of the things I want to see is like one of those things are going to correct. Meaning, my biggest one is Trey Murphy. Like, is Trey Murphy going to start to show some of the signs that we saw at the end of last season, and what has made him become such an integral part of this team? Because I think a lot of the offensive, and I say that when the Pelicans have had franchise high in points and assists this season, but I still think that there is a level to unlock with this offense, and it is based solely upon Trey Murphy's shooting and his athletic ability. And the more that he gets comfortable and starts to knock down some of the shots that we all known him to knock those down, I think that raises the floor of the Pelicans offense a lot higher than it is right now. I mean, you won't get some of these lulls and some of the times where it looks really tough for those guys to score. And so I think, we talked about, these guys haven't played their best and they're in that good spot. If Trey Murphy can get rolling, like, this is a time where the Pelicans, this is a good time for him to do it, because the Pelicans have a favorable schedule going forward. There's some games that you can take care of. If you go out there and you can take care, you should have the advantage against them. Wouldn't it be a blessing for Trey Murphy to come out of this All-Star break rejuvenated, working? Some clips came out of him shooting with Zion in the workout. And I think if he can get going, the Pelicans can really catch fire and really make a push to host a playoffs series, at least in the first round. So my biggest headline, what I'm going to be looking for the Pelicans coming out of this All-Star break, for me, is Trey Murphy and his ability to get back to the Trey Murphy that we know, whether that's hitting threes, cutting and dunking and being effective on both sides of the ball. Is Trey Murphy going to be able to get to that level, which will then raise the floor of the Pelicans?
Right. So I think Trey's a good place to start. Obviously, his inconsistency probably comes from the fact that he's never had a major injury like he had to start this season, and also trying to insert himself back into a healthy lineup with CJ and Zion and BI. What does that mean for him in the shot hierarchy? Because, again, he's never had that experience kind of going into the season. And I think that has led to the ups and downs and the uncertainty. And from a player who is so confident in his abilities, you can kind of see on the court that he's thinking more than just playing. And so, there's a stat that the Pels are 3-6 when Trey Murphy doesn't score at least 10 points. And like, I've gone through over this break and watched some old games, and you and I have talked about it on previous episodes. Like, there's a difference when either the Pels are trailing or when the Pels are leading. When Trey Murphy's hitting shots versus when he's not. Everybody else can kind of get theirs, and the Pels can have a lead or the Pels can be down, and you still feel as if, oh, this is a close game. But when Trey's hitting those, and you infamously called him the most ignitable player on the team, it's just different. The energy that I compare it to Jose, I compare it to Zion. When Trey is about to shoot the shot, you can feel the arena leaning up to the edge of their seat saying, this is about to go. That is a different feel that if you can feel it in the stands, they can feel it on the court. And so if he's playing at a different level and he's playing to the degree that you've known Trey Murphy to play, that is the thing that you look at some of the Lakers blowouts, and you look at some of the Clippers blowout, the Nuggets blowout. That's the differentiator. When Trey doesn't have it going in those games versus the top of the top, and you're shooting twos versus threes, that's the difference that I'm noticing that hasn't been there in those games versus the games when they've won and Trey has come out versus the Clippers and versus the Celtics and hit some early shots. So I think he is just such an incremental piece to this team, like you mentioned, that him developing some consistency and getting to that point where he's Trey Murphy, I think that is what you see on top of Zion getting a little bit more underneath his wings in terms of his conditioning and things like that as a big factor going into the Pelican season. The last thing on Trey is, if you look at his first 30 games last year versus first 30 games last year, and obviously his rookie season where he didn't play very much, his stats are almost identical. Right? It's just the shooting splits are a little bit different. And so, again, he's almost a player that kind of works himself in throughout the season to where he gets hot when it matters, and you'd like to see that kind of take over here. I think something that's important for me, just to maintain, whether it's a win or a loss, is just to see the Pels maintain their identity through games. And if you look at things like most of their losses, come from them not playing the way that they normally play defensively. Like, again, as much as you want to look at the firepower in this team, when the Pels are at their best, they're locking people up on one end and they're scoring on the other end. And even in some of these nasty games that people want to kind of critique, that kind of ended going into All-Star break, the reason why they won is because they're holding the teams to like 80 points, right? Like, no matter who you're playing, whether they're starting rotation guys, all-star players, or players who won't be in the league next year, everybody can score in the NBA. But if you can lock people down consistently, you always have the chance. And so, again, if you look at some of those blowout losses versus the Lakers and Clippers and OKC and things like that, it's because they couldn't get stops. And that's the thing that has to be a non-negotiable for this team. We talk about ball movement. We talk about Zion paint to great. If you're doing those things every single night, you're okay with what the result brings. If it's a loss, it's a loss. But you gave yourself a best opportunity to win. Now, some games it's going to call for more defense. Some games it's going to call for more offense. But are you doing the things that make you your team night in, night out? Because that's kind of shows me the patterns and consistency in terms of a team knowing who they are and moving forward. What are your thoughts on that and how the Pels progress throughout the season?
No, absolutely. Absolutely eloquently put. And I'd like to piggyback on that with, obviously what you say, the defense and coming out with an identity and coming out with things that, are non-negotiable and are the pillars of your success and committing to them. I like to take it a step further, and you need to see that on the offensive side as well. There needs to be a heavy focus on one style of offense. We've seen, the egalitarian offense, the whack-a-mole offense, whatever you want to call it. We've seen the point Zion offense. We've seen Brandon Ingram in charge of the offense. We've seen all of these different things. All of these variations of the Pelicans have worked to a degree. The best version of the Pelicans, I think, that we've seen is the point Zion version of the Pelicans. And I think that when you watch the Nuggets, it's never like, okay, well, is Jamal Murray going to take over the offense this game? Or is this going to be an Aaron Gordon type of game, right? When you see the Celtics, right, you're not looking and saying, well, is this going to be the Jaylen Brown game? Is he going to, be the driver? Is Drew Holiday going to be the driver? Like, there always is time for those different variations of those high-level championship-driven offenses. Same with Milwaukee, right? You never looking as like, well, is this going to be driven by Dame tonight? There's always a person who's at the center of the offense that it goes to. Now, things work around that. Other offenses work around that. Other people get theirs off of that. But the identity goes back to your word identity that those teams go to when they start the games off. Jokic is touching the ball. Tatum is touching the ball. Giannis is touching the ball. LeBron is touching the ball. Like, it is known where the offensive identity is, and everything flows around that. Zion needs to be on the ball more often. And there are times throughout the game where Brandon Ingram is going to take over and score 15 straight points. CJ is going to hit 3 straight threes in a row. Him and JV are going to get some chemistry going, and JV is going to be able to eat. But I think that all comes off a result of sticking to an identity, and that is letting Zion be on the ball and committing to that and let everything play off of that. If that's not working for whatever reason, then you can go into your other different variations of offense. But I think you need to come in every single game with at least an identity that this guy is going to be on the ball. He's going to be the fulcrum of our offense every single game, and we're going to play off of that.
Right. That's a great point. CJ, again, they were asked today at practice, obviously we see what the results are at point Zion. Are you going to lean more into that? Willie Green said, we're going to shrink down the rosters a little bit, cut down the rotations a little bit, shrink down what the offense looks like. And they asked CJ the same thing. Part of what they've been doing up until this point is to conserve everybody. Like we talked about, hey, if everyone's playing 30 minutes and everyone's taking their turn, by the time the end of the season, you should be fresh because you didn't play 45 minutes like Luka every single night. You should have a lot left. And again, for a team that's struggled with health, it's worked up until this point, right? And so you want to see them dive into that. I absolutely agree with you to an extent. In terms of them consistently using, like CJ calls it, Zion as a planet and everyone revolving around him and everyone can have their turn. Sometimes someone else might lead the game in points, but it all comes through the central part. Instead of that being solely upon Willie Green and James Borrego and CJ, whoever, to get in the ball, there are too many times where there's multiple possessions and Zion doesn't touch the ball and nobody is upset about it when someone clearly should be upset about it. And to me, the answer who should be upset about it is Zion Williamson. We talk about him stepping into that next level and rounding into who he can be so that he can walk into his very first NBA playoffs and show what he has. Part of that is accepting who you are as a superstar. Some of that superstar comes with cockiness. And what that means is, hey, if I see too many possessions that don't look good, the next possession, you better give me the damn ball. You need to see him demand the ball. And sometimes if the ball's not coming to you or someone's not passing it to you, you go get it, right? We talk about Zion being on the defensive glass, the offensive glass. He's one of those guys where if the ball's not going to come to you, you have the ability to go find the ball and make sure you have the ball. And so there needs to be the kind of that switch turn for him where, hey, this is a time, and you start to see it the last couple games where I need to be assertive and I need to make sure I touch the ball. So it's part the team, it's part the scheme, and it's part the meme. It's part the guy, right? And he's got to accept that mantle as, hey, I'm going to be the right reason why the Pelicans get out the first round, into the first round, past the first round, whatever it may be. And that needs to show these last couple games. Now, you brought up a really good point in terms of consistency offensively with an identity. How confident are you in Brandon Ingram being able to turn that switch on and adapt in a game's notice, in a couple games notice, and things like that? Because, like, if you look at his time, like, with Zion and without Zion, like, the stats kind of look the same, and they're both kind of, like, underwhelming for BI's caliber of talent. But do you feel confident that he knows that, hey, when I'm off ball, these are the things I need to do? When I'm on ball, or Z's out the game, or Z's sitting out a back-to-back, this is the time that I need to be that guy who is averaging 31 points per game in my first playoff series. Where's your confidence level there?
Yeah, I think, like I said in the last episode, I don't think this is the season where that's going to click. I just think that these are the games that they should have been going through earlier in their time. What I do think that Brandon Ingram, first of all, he does have to find that medium, between, and it's crazy because it doesn't have to be game to game. Like, he can still be this 30-point game scorer. Like, Zion is not getting in the way of that. It is just how that offense comes to him, and is he able to? And it's weird because there are games where he does, right? I keep harkening back to that Charlotte game where he hit 7 threes and took 11 of them. Like, you don't have to be a catch and shoot guy, but, like, you know that the ball is going to find you. And so, like, be ready to shoot. Get yourself in position to shoot. You're going to be able to get your offense the way you get your offense. Zion doesn't play 48 minutes of the game. And so you're going to be able to do that. And so those times when Zion isn't there, you should already be in that mode because, like, you shouldn't turn it off when Zion is not there, right? Like, if Zion scores 40 points in the game, that's 40 points. You're averaging 120. Somebody got to get the rest of them. Like, you can go and score these points, and do what you do best. It's just about being able and being willing to accept the offense is you're not out there by yourself anymore. Those years where you were out there playing and fighting for your life and shooting over 2 and 3. Guys, like, you don't have that. And a lot of people leave teams to find that kind of help, right? People team up. Phoenix teams up to get this kind of help. You just organically have it. And so it's all about the mentality of finding the way to be aggressive, and also understanding that your points may not come every single night with you scoring in isolation and things like that. And Brandon Ingram has done a great job of doing moving the ball and becoming a playmaker and things like that. But at the same time, like, you have to be Brandon Ingram. Like, in order for this team to be, it's not the Zion show. It's the offense runs better through Zion, but, like, Brandon Ingram is is riding shotgun in this entire vehicle. And so he has to be that guy and look to do it. And I think he'll be able to do, because I've seen it happen in games. Like, it's not something that's like we're waiting for it to happen for the first time. There are games where these two guys, that Minnesota game, they looked incredible. There was just no stopping them. So it's there. The Charlotte game, Brandon Ingram hit 7 threes. Like, it's there. I think it's just them working themselves out to find it. Like I said, I think this is going to be midway through like next season. Like, once Brandon Ingram signs his extension, and we'll do that show for another time. But when he signs his extension, and he comes back and plays for the Pelicans, I think next season, midway through next season, you'd be like, okay, now I'm starting to see a little bit of the chemistry and things going around this time next season. But for now, I don't know if you'll see that pretty offense that you see. You might not need it. Again, the talent just might be enough to get it, and you can just take over in certain times of the games. But Brandon Ingram has to be Brandon Ingram for this thing to work.
Right. Now, a hot topic that, again, has been a concern not just for this iteration of the Pelicans, but really every iteration of the Pelicans since B.I. and Zion got to town, is can they protect leads? Like, very early on in the Stan years, the last time you saw a significant amount of games between Zion and B.I., they were also blowing leads then. They were also getting double-digit leads. Now, it wasn't as pretty. They weren't playing defense. None of that was happening. But they were getting leads and then blowing them because they didn't know how to close. So that's kind of a two-part question. Like, right now, they have the second best first-half margin in the NBA to the Celtics. That should be a sign that, hey, you're a good team or a better team than fifth in your conference. But are you confident that, again, they've done some things, they've blown some leads late, heading into the All-Star break and had to pull it out that they did. Are you confident that this team is at least getting better? Maybe not fixed it and maybe not mastered it, because you see teams blow lead all the time, even the good team, even the Celtics. But, like, you feel like they're taking steps in the right direction to at least, hey, we didn't blow it by losing it. We just blew the lead, and then we won by a small margin.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it. Baby steps, just baby steps. And, again, these games, they never come down to, okay, you look at the wins, they say, oh, you won by 5, you won by 7. There's no point differential as far as like standings go, and you don't get extra points for wins. But at the same time, you got to know that when you're in the playoffs, you're not going to be able to like mess around and blow some of these leads, because your season can be over like that. Like, it's all fine and dandy when you're playing in a regular season. You got another game tomorrow or the next day or the day after. You blow enough leads in the playoffs, and your season can be over quick with a lot of uncomfortable questions coming your way. And so, this is something that Willie Green has to do. Like, this is why you're the coach. This is what you're brought in to do, to make sure that your team is continuously learning from the things that the things that they do and the failures that they have. And so you would hope that over this All-Star break, that is a focus point, right? I saw from the Pelicans app, they said that one of the things that Willie Green was focusing in on and the Pelicans were focusing in on was avoiding the play-in tournament, right? They don't want to be in the play-in tournament. The only way to do that is to win games, and you're going to be coming across, like, you have a fair schedule going forward, but you still got the Bucks coming up and the Celtics coming up and OKC. You still got some teams in there that you're going to have to, you're not going to blow out. Like, it's not going to be blowouts. And so you're going to have to, figure some things out these last stretch while also making sure that you're winning these games. But I do think that they're taking steps. I think, as the offense kind of steers themselves into one direction, you're starting to see a little bit more clarity on offense with guys and where they want to go. I think it's just you can't get full of yourself once you get these big leads. The NBA is now broken when it comes to three-point shooting, so leads can go like that. And so you have to make sure you're maintaining that kind of intensity, because you have to be gearing up and ready for that when you hit the playoffs. You can't be trying to figure it out once you get in the playoffs, because, again, your season will end rather quickly.
Right. The two games that I look at that were kind of like previews, I would say, of how the Pels have just been Jekyll and Hyde all season long is the Celtics game in Boston and the Clippers game in LA. On one of the examples, you kind of had that gut feeling that the Celtics are going to make a run eventually, and the Celtics are going to close out this game because that's what the Celtics do as the most talented team in the NBA. And sure enough, what happened? On the other hand, you had the Clippers game where everyone's going to use it as excuses if they were on a road trip and they came home, and then that's the game. That's always a trap. But the Pels have had several of those too, and nobody gave them that excuse as well. So I'm just going to take it word. And like watching the game, I wasn't looking at a team that was like tired or that didn't have energy. They gave their pushes. They tried to make their runs at home. They came back and had their runs, and each time the Pelicans kind of stiff-armed them like we did our little brother all the years, over and over and over, and you kept them at bay. And so one hand, you're like, man, that's a rough way, and that's how teams lose in the playoffs. On the other hand, it's like, man, that's what a good team does in the playoffs, keeps teams at bay once they build a lead. And so the Pelicans, is no secret, they're 25th in the NBA in closed game win percentage. They have too many turnovers. They're too stagnant in possessions. But like when you go and watch some of the leads that they've blown, some of it I just think is just unfamiliarity with the people on the court. Because it's not like Zion's just getting stopped at the rim. It's like people are dribbling in areas and guys are standing right next to other guys in the floor space. It's like things that feel correctable. What are your thoughts on the Pels needing to have an answer on how they're going to close games, because you're not going to blow every team out in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that ties into Trey Murphy, honestly, because I think that Willie wants Trey to be a really big part of the closing lineup, whatever the situation is. But he hasn't really been able to get Trey into a lot of those situations because Trey has been struggling with his shot and things like that. And I think Trey getting back to some of the times, I think one, it helps keep leads extended because we've seen Trey hit threes, momentum stoppers, and in order to keep that lead going. But I think also in closing moments, it gives Willie Green another option when he's on, to kind of have that spacing so that Zion and Brandon Ingram can make the decisions and do the things that they like to do. And then while also having just a knockdown shooter in the corner or in the spot where he can be effective. So they need to figure this out, though. They do, because the playoffs are all about making adjustments and and the game between the game and the we call it the game of inches, right? Those stats, the ones you don't see. Those are all of that is gonna matter in the playoffs. And if you are a team that is struggling to close out games and you're going into the playoffs, not only do the opponents know that, right? And they know, okay, well, as long as we can keep fighting, we could get in the game, they'll fold. But it's in your mind as well. And so it's a double play where their confidence is rising as they make a little run here, a little run there, because they know you're going to fold. And then in your head, you're like, oh, here we go again. And then people start to press and things like that. And so you want to figure this out at the end of games as it goes on. Or you could just continue to blow people out, like I've always said. And that is the best way to fix late game situation. Blow people out, and you don't have to worry about late game execution. So they do need to figure this out. And I think, as they get this favorable schedule, you may get some opportunities to kind of figure some things out as they go along and hopefully avoid that play-in tournament.
And whether you want to count it or not, again, the Memphis game, the Trailblazer game, at the end of even the Wizards game to some degree, like, they still had to close those games. Like, they shouldn't have had to close those games, but they still had to get to stuff because the other team was making a run. And so, again, whether you want to count it because it's not a versus good need, these are still repetitions that this team just does not have that they need to have going down the stretch. So you bring up a really good point. If Trey is going to close the game, somebody is not going to close the game in that starting five. And so my biggest concern, the biggest red flag to this team, in my opinion, other than just time on task, is the answer at center versus the pick and roll. In the playoffs with Luka Doncic and Jokic and the Clippers, and like all these teams that can isolate you, They're gonna pick apart what you do the worst. They're gonna stop you from what you do the best. And pick and roll defense with JV is less than ideal. His feet just aren't fast enough. That's not his strong suit. Larry Nance, we saw it last year. We saw it in other opportunities. Like, he's not the tallest guy. So when you got Anthony Davis out there and Jokic out there and Derek Lively out there and these guys that rebound well, it's almost like they nullify him from being the athletic, switchable guy that he is, right? Because he's not the rebounder that Draymond is as a small ball five. So you can't count him in that category. And so then you rely on the rest of the team, all your wings, to rebound, which, again, that has been up and down at times this season. So what are your thoughts on the answer at center, since nobody came through that door in a trade? You haven't seen any buyouts yet. Is the answer Zion at the 5? And, like, is that matchup dependent? What are your thoughts on, like, who closes at the big when the games matter, when your season's on the line?
I think the answer has been staring us in the face this entire time. Just go ahead and get Cody Zeller when you need him. Just go ahead and run Cody Zeller out there. You know what I'm saying? And we will be fine. All right. Jokic, Schmokic. Go ahead and let Cody Zeller get the face mask in there. We got him. Yeah, I think personally, I think it's Zion. I just think it's Zion. I think when you get into the playoffs, it's gotta be Will, and it's gotta be your best players on the floor. And listen, I don't think you can do it against like Jokic.
All right, let's do this exercise. Mm-hmm. Let's just go through the West. The Wolves, you feel good Zion closing at the 5?
I feel good with Zion closing against the Wolves.
Okay, I'll go Bear.
I do.
All right.
I do.
The Nuggets.
No.
Okay. No. The Lakers.
Against AD, yeah. I don't think JV is. I don't think JV is the answer, and I think Larry Nance is, again. You're the athletic big until you on the floor with Anthony Davis. And so at that point, I feel like your best bet is to throw Zion out there with Trey and Herb and BI and CJ. And just, you're gonna have to stop this offense like we're gonna have to stop your offense and play like that towards the end of games, because I don't think, whether it's JV or Larry Nance, I don't think either one of them is gonna be, okay against AD. So if you're gonna lose, you might as well lose with your best players on the floor.
I ain't mad at that. Then you look at OKC, you could probably put Zion on check.
Absolutely.
Dallas with the Derek Lively. Now, we just watched this and Luka didn't play, so maybe
I like him against that.
Okay, and then you got like the Kings, yes, the Warriors, yes, the Suns, yes, and the Clippers probably. That's because they're probably not closing with Zubac. So, like, really, you're just looking at like those Lakers and Nuggets and Lakers. Other than that, you might be onto something. But go ahead.
Yeah, I just think at some point in the playoffs, you're gonna have to have your best 5 on the floor. And it's very similar to what we talked about. We the infamous Alperen Sengun game where the Pelicans decided they was gonna put JRE out there and put a body out there where it's like, well, I mean, if he's gonna get cooked anyway, like, you might as well put Zion and get the benefits of trade shooting or whatever the case is on the offensive end, as opposed to just sacrificing offense and defense both ways. So listen, this is gonna be incumbent upon Zion. Like, if they're gonna play you as on offense point guard and on defense center, like, you have to know that this is coming. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. He's a Biggie fan. Like, you just got to do it, bro. Like, you got to understand, like, that's what there's going to be leaning on you at times, to play the 5, to rebound, to play defense, to be locked in on the defensive side. Again, we've seen a different Zion. We've seen blocks. We've seen him going for blocks. We've seen him going for chase downs and steals. And we've seen it. Like, he's not Herb Jones, but we've seen a better and more attention to defensive details version of Zion. And so at this point, if it gets to a point where, like, JV is played off the floor and Larry Nance is giving you the rebounding, and so you're like, what else do we do? I think the answer is Zion, and you just run Zion out there with your best players, and you have to stop that offense the same way that they have to stop your offense. And so you go like that, and you go down with your best 5 players on the floor.
I tend to agree. So we talk about having your best players on the floor. Now, there was a time where Jordan Hawkins had made his imprint. You thought he was in the rotation, and then he was not. Jose had a couple good games. He saved the game, quite frankly, for the Pelicans. And since then, you have seen no Jordan Hawkins. So along that same mold, as Willie Green, again, earlier today said that rotations should be shrinking. Where do you land on, well, is Hawk a part of that rotation? Or is Jose a part of that rotation? Or is CJ the answer just to play more minutes in that situation? Because, like, if you look at things, all right, Jose's the better defender. They're both going to get hunted in the playoffs. Like, either one of them is going to get hunted in the playoffs in a pick-and-roll situation. Jose's the energy jolt, right? Like, he brings it from that standpoint. Up until this month where he's shooting 24% from 3, he was shooting career-high 37%, 40%, 39% in consecutive months. And so you could leave him on the floor. Well, Hawk's just a different animal. He's a different player. He's a floor spacer. He's taller. He's a better rebounder, but he doesn't give you some of those other intangibles that Hawk gives you. That Jose gives you. Where do you lie on that spectrum, knowing that like everything's about to get tighter, and so like minutes are going to be hard to come by from the non-CJ and Trey and Zions of the world?
You might as well go ahead and throw Najee in there too, because you know. It's interesting that Willie said that like the rotations are going to shrink because Dyson is hurt, and so how much can you shrink and get set on a rotation if like I would assume one of the major players is going to be coming back sometime this season, and so you're going to have to redo that anyway. And so it's very interesting that he said that while Dyson is hurt, unless he has already had a plan in mind and Dyson wasn't a part of it. So we'll see.
That defensive guy off the bench that Najee's going to be playing will be taken by Dyson when he goes back. Either way it goes.
Fair point. So maybe Najee steps in is getting those Dyson minutes, and then when Dice comes back, Najee doesn't get those minutes. I think Najee's going to continue to play, which further puts back Jose and Jordan Hawkins. So that gets to my point. I personally still think that Jordan Hawkins is the better fit for that last, I guess, rotation spot over Jose. I love what Jose has done. I love what he's brought to the team. I love that he's came back, right? He was out of rotation, got back, and solidified himself, right, as a guy who can play and bring those intangibles. I just think that shooting is going to be at such a premium when you come to the playoffs, especially when teams get a chance to build defenses centered around Zion, where that wall is going to be there. Like, they are going to try to take away Zion no matter what. And I think at that point in time, you're going to need guys to knock down shots. And, Jordan Hawkins hasn't had the best month shooting. He hasn't played a lot, but he hasn't had a best month shooting when he's got on the floor. I think part of that is like, I'm in the game. Well, to hell with it. I'm getting it up regardless. Mm-hmm. But I do think that he is a significantly better shooter than Jose. And I just think at the end of these games in the playoffs, when you need a pinch guy to come in and spare CJ 2-3 minutes in the playoffs, I think you would want to bring in another shooter, another knockdown guy, and then a taller guy. And again, Jordan Hawkins is not a bad defensive player. He gives effort. He is trying on defense. He's just sleight of frame. Mm-hmm. So at least he gives you the effort. It's not like a guy who just gets blown by because he doesn't want to play defense. It's just he gets sleight of frame and he gets overpowered. But he does give you energy on the defensive end. And one of the things that I've always talked about Jordan Hawkins this entire season is that he plays harder he runs harder than a lot of people. And so when you see Zion trucking down the floor, you know that Jordan Hawkins is running just as hard, if not harder, to get to his spot to make sure that he's set up and ready. And I just think that there's something to give. And then also, he's a guy that you cannot come off. And so that's just another defender that won't be in Brandon Ingram's way, that won't be in Zion's way. And I just think that he's the better. But I think that Jose has got, that special place in Willie's heart. Like I keep saying, the last time Willie Green had any success with the Pelicans in the postseason, Jose Alvarado played the last second of that game. He was on the floor as the season ended against the Phoenix Suns in the playoffs that year. And I think that he is just a guy that Willie believes in and that he trusts. Very similar to Najee. So I don't expect to see a lot of Jordan Hawkins, but I wish, and I think you should probably have him over Jose. What about you? What you got on that?
I tend to agree. I am all for point Zion. I am all for point Brandon Ingram and surrounding them with shooters. We said this after game one. The way the rotation should be is give Zion the ball and bring him with shooters. Give B.I. the ball, bring in another wave of shooters, and just keep it going over and over and over. I've been on that, my friend. And again, I'm one of those people that I sit up on the edge of my seat when I watch Jose Alvarado. But there's just something different about that Jordan Hawkins guy. The same way we talk about Trey hitting a couple and being ignitable, I feel like Jordan Hawkins has a lot of those qualities too. So I just think, to your point, when defenses collapse, the best way to make them pay and the most easiest path for Zion to say, oh, they left him open, that's 3. So with that being said, the beginning of the end starts tomorrow for the Pelicans as they start this race down the stretch, try to improve in the standings, try to get home field advantage to start round 1. What do you got left for the people, Garrick? It should be a fun race. We'll be coming to you guys after the games. You guys give us your comments, give us your thoughts as we see this final stretch.
Yeah, as always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, tomorrow is where it begins. Like I said in the last episode, I'd love to see the Pelicans, mainly B.I. and Zion, come out and just put the kibosh on this game tomorrow against the Rockets and just kind of announce that like the Pelicans are gonna be here. So we got the Rockets, you got the Heat, and then you got the Bulls Sunday, which we'll be at the Chalk Talk. We'll be there to see you guys, to chop it up with y'all, and things like that in person. So come out, come and holler at us, come and let us know what you think about this Pelicans thing, man. What you think about Jose and Jordan Hawkins? Do you want more Hawk? Do you want more Jose? And things like that. Let us know in the comments. As always, we're reading them and checking them out and talking about them and kind of trying to respond to some of them. So hit us up in the comments and let us know what you guys think and what you guys got going on. So follow myself at Garrick_Rattler on Twitter, X, wherever you get your social medias. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO Basketball No E. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans Basketball, and we'll see you guys.